Hello Illumineers, welcome back to the Lorcana layer. My name is Garrick, and today I'm going over my recent quest to PAX Unplugged, where Ravensburger was hosting a whole bunch of different Lorcana tournaments, from Core Constructed to First Chapter and Rise of the Floodborn Sealed to team events and everything in between. In today's video, I'm going to go over my PAX Unplugged experience. It was my first time there, and I was attending as a member of the press to cover everything Lorcana that was going on. But while I was there, I also participated in two of the Core Constructed tournaments with Ruby Amethyst, and I went undefeated. These tournaments were absolutely stacked with 60 plus players and multiple Golden Mickey winners in every single one. Team Forbidden Mountain came down, Jonathan Lamb was there, a whole bunch of other players that made Top 64 and multiple DLCs were in attendance, so the competition was absolutely stacked, and I was able to go undefeated with Ruby Amethyst in two tournaments to win two of the exclusive 2024 convention playmats. So in today's video, I'm going to go over all of that, plus my deck and my matchups, to let you know how it went. I also do have something to give away. I have the Illumineers Quest Deep Trouble, which I did pick up, and I'll go into detail why I picked this up. But I already have a playset of the Mulan and the Piglet, and I already have the game, so I don't necessarily need this. So if you would like this, I am giving it away to one of my subscribers. Just comment down below, like the video, and of course be subscribed, and you will have to be in the US to claim this. So just let me know down in the comments below what your favorite ink color combination is and what your favorite card is, and I will give this away to one of my subscribers. So without any further ado, let's get right into the video. So before we get into the Lorcana thing, I just wanted to go over my general first visit to PAX. I had never been to any of the PAX events before, so Unplugged would be my first one. And if you're not familiar, PAX Unplugged is all about board games, trading card games. Basically, the other two PAXs are video games, and this one is the Unplugged version where everybody sits around a table and plays a good old tabletop game. The convention hall is absolutely stacked with a ton of different games, not just trading card games, and it is an amazing experience that I would highly recommend to anyone who is interested in trading card games or tabletop games in general. The staff there are all extremely nice. They helped me find my way around multiple times when I got lost, because it is in the old Reading train station, that is the Philadelphia Convention Center, and it is absolutely massive. You can definitely get lost in there if you take a wrong turn, but it is absolutely beautiful. So let's get right into the Lorcana stuff. Like I said, Ravensburger was there in full force. They were demoing Lorcana, they were selling exclusive items, and they were, of course, hosting tournaments. And I was able to compete in multiple of these with my Ruby Amethyst and go undefeated, which was really, really fun. But before we get into the deck, I want to talk about all of the exclusive items I was able to get and show them off to you, so you can see what's out there in case you ever want to pick any of these items up. First, I was able to pick up the amazing deck box, but this isn't a product review, so I'll just let you know it's pretty nice. Let's talk about the things that were exclusively at PAX. This is the convention playmat that I was able to win a couple of, and this was the piece de resistance, the amazing Ursula sleeves. This is what the sleeve looks like just by itself. It is very, very glossy. As you can see, it has that sheen to it. I would not recommend using these sleeves without protection, but everything that you bought came with this Aladdin Intrepid Commander promo, which is absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. Kristoff was the promo from the previous set, but I really do like what they're doing with the promos here. But let's take a look at the sleeve with a Dragon Shield outer. The outer actually does give it a little bit of texture, and it makes it look a little shinier. If you can see it in person, you definitely see what I'm talking about. It doesn't quite capture it as well here on the camera, but these sleeves are absolutely amazing. They came with the Illumineers Quest, which is why I bought it. So Really, these were like $70 sleeves after tax because I already have the quest. But when you flip it over, you can see the pink on the inside, which is also very glossy. And this color just looks absolutely amazing when you play Ruby Amethyst. So if you are able to get your hands on these during another convention, I know this is the first time they were ever shown off, was at PAX, and you did have to buy the quest to get them. But if you're able to get them on the secondary market, if you're interested in them, I would say 100% worth it just for the look alone. But I would highly recommend putting a Dragon Shield outer sleeve over top of these just so you can protect the sleeve itself, not to mention the cards that you have on the inside. Every purchase did come with the Brave Little Tailor anniversary pin, so I've got a few of those. I guess I can give away one of those as well, so if you want to enter the giveaway, I'll send you one of these too. And they were also selling troves of Rise of the Floodborn, which is amazing for me because I missed that entire chapter of Disney Lorcana, that entire set, because I started playing just after set 3 had wrapped up, so the beginning of Ursula's Return. And I was able to get an enchanted Arthur Wizard's Apprentice in my trove, so that was awesome. But yeah, that's what I was able to snag there at PAX. So they did have a bunch of different packs that you could get. You could get the first chapter, Rise of the Floodborn, Into the Inklands, Ursula's Return, Shimmering Skies, and Azurite Sea. You get one pack of each, which was really cool. Like I mentioned, they were doing sealed drafts of the first chapter with Rise of the Floodborn. That was incredibly popular. I was not even able to get into one of those. But overall, I would say that Ravensburger had a really solid presence at PAX, and if you were considering going to PAX just for Lorcana next year, I would highly recommend it. Not only are you going to be able to play in very competitive events, if that's something you're interested in doing, but you can also compete in more casual events, get exclusive items, and then if you missed the first chapter, they did have some there this year, and then, of course, the exclusive items, just being with the community. Overall, I would say it was a ton of fun. If you're not there for Lorcana specifically, there's a million other things that you could do, and I'll talk about some of those things at the end of the video. But let's get right into the deck profile and my matchups. Okay, so up on the screen, you will see my deck list, and I would call it pretty standard at this point with a couple of different changes. I know a lot of people are currently running Bell Accomplished Mystic, but for this, I ran 2 Merlin Crab. I mean, you could never go wrong with the Merlin Crab. It's an incredibly consistent card that is able to do a lot in the current meta. It helps you challenge the board more effectively. It helps you trade against other evasive cards with your Genie and your Elsas a lot more effectively. Overall, just an amazing card to have in your deck. Of course, I'm running the Flynn Rider Frenemy and Sisu Emboldened Warrior combo with 1 Sisu Empowered Sibling alongside those cards just to have that shift line open. Of course, this was not open deck lists, but it's still an amazing card to have in your deck. And once your opponent sees it, they know that they have to try and play around it and potentially play suboptimally. I had 2 and 2 of the ladies there, Lady Tremaine and Madame Medusa. I think this is still a really, really solid split for these cards, just because the 2 Lady Tremaine come in handy when you're playing against a ton of Ruby Sapphire, but they're sort of changing their decks these days, and maybe that's something we can talk about in another video. As far as the Genie goes, I had 3 Genie, 3 Rabbit. This felt really good. I'd, of course, love to have 4 Genie, but I don't want to push the uninkable count too high because I do have 4 Be Prepared in here, and I don't think that I would go any lower. If I were to cut anything for an additional Genie, it would be the Sisu Empowered Sibling, but again, I think having 5 board wipe effects is incredibly potent, and being able to do that on turn 6 with a shift option is extremely explosive and can completely shift the game in your favor if your opponent is not expecting it. So I really do love the Empowered Sibling being in the deck, but Genie Wish Fulfilled was everything that you would want and more. Of course, sometimes I did want the genie to be a rabbit, and sometimes I wanted the rabbit to be the genie. But in any case, both cards are valuable, and I would keep both in the deck. I don't know if I would want to drop the 2 Merlin Rabbit, to be honest with you. I do think that the card is still incredibly valuable, especially in the mirror matchup and against slower decks where you have the time to bounce it multiple times and get that effective draw engine going. The value of Merlin Rabbit is just so incredibly high in terms of card advantage that it's going to be really tough for me to go down any lower on this card. So those are my overall thoughts on the deck. As far as matchups go, in the first tournament, you just had to go 3-0 in these tournaments, and then you won a playmat, and then they moved on to the next. So there wasn't a bunch of rounds of Swiss and then a cut to top 8. It was just go 3-0, you win the playmat. So of course the competition is going to be stiffer and stiffer the more rounds you get into it. But let's go over the day 1. Round 1, I was on the play against Amethyst Steel, and this was the Brendan Nicandio version of the deck. I was able to go 2-0. They weren't really able to establish that many scary threats onto the board that I had to be worried about. I was able to effectively leverage the power of Madam Mim Fox to get rid of their daisies, and being on the play in the first game was, of course, incredibly helpful. It was able to give me the advantage that I needed and help me mulligan properly in the second game. We did play for fun because these 2 games did go incredibly quick, so I played against my opponent 2 more times after, and they beat me in both games. So that just goes to show that this is an incredibly close matchup, and depending on the draws and how it plays out, either deck can win, but I don't think that Ruby Amethyst feels too bad into this deck. Of course, with the addition of Kita that DeCandio made, it does make it a lot more difficult for Ruby Amethyst to stand up against this deck. This version was not running the Kitas that Brennan ran in the CCS 10K, so that's just something to keep in mind. In round 2, I went up against a Golden Mickey winner who was playing Emerald Amethyst. I was on the play, and I was able to win game 1 on the play. They were able to win game 2 while I was on the draw, and then game 3 was incredibly close. They were at 19, I believe. If they would have top-decked a card that gave them an instant lore, they would have won, but I was able to swing back and win on the final turn. Again, that was Emerald Amethyst. I really don't like playing against this matchup as Ruby Amethyst. I think in 2-game format, I would feel incredibly unfavored just because they can sort of cheese a win and then win on the play as well. It's an incredibly fast deck that you have to be aware of the go-go's towards the end of the game that can just steal so much lore off of you. So Maui becomes a lot harder to stick onto the board and use effectively. So that's just something that you have to think about at all times. And I was just sitting there stressed out about Go-Go coming down at any time. The list you're looking at right now is Artabax's list. I would say that the list I played against was incredibly similar to this. I saw basically all these cards during the match. I don't know the exact numbers and the exact cards in their deck, but it was incredibly similar to this. If you're going to Last Chance qualifiers, I would expect to see Emerald Amethyst decks like this, or if you're just playing at your set championships here coming up in the next month, expect to see decks like this. And what you want to do to beat these decks is sort of beat them on board and then accrue card advantage. They can also get a decent amount of card advantage with their cards that they have, but they cut friends on the other side for the most part, so you can use that to leverage card advantage. And then, of course, you can get out early with Flynn and Sisu if you're able to do that, and you can effectively gain lore with those cards. Flynn and Sisu did just straight up win me a couple of these games over the weekend, so still really like those cards in a bunch of different matchups. In the finals, I played against Amethyst Steel. Here I just have another just placeholder deck list. I don't know what my opponent was playing. I was on the draw, and I won 2-1. They were playing a bunch of locations, which were really difficult for me to get rid of. Luckily, I had Crab in my deck, which was able to mop up a bunch of these, but I feel like if I was playing Bell, I may have lost this match just because they were playing a bunch of locations and doing so very aggressively. They had, of course, the Calhouns, the Smees, they were running docks, and they were chaining their docks a lot, which was really hard to deal with. They can get that draw engine going if they're able to dump their hand and get docks, and they just present a bunch of threats over and over and over. And this was one of the matchups where Sisu was incredibly powerful. Of course, I'm talking about the shift line. I was able to shift it one game, absolutely just completely won me the game where I would have lost and lost this entire match. So still really, really big fan of the Sisu. And on day 2, I was able to go undefeated again. This time my matchup spread was a bit different. In round 1, I was on the draw against Sapphire Steel. This is going to be your standard Sapphire Steel deck. Things that R&B are playing, things that Jonathan Lamb are playing, things that Sky are playing. All very similar. They were playing a whole new world iteration, so that is something to keep in mind. This deck was basically your standard Sapphire Steel, but I was able to get the win. Flynn and Sisu were incredibly potent in this matchup yet again, but not much has changed, I would say. I think this is still a very winnable matchup, and we should be pretty favored into it. There was an interesting situation that happened in my matchup against this deck. My opponent, I'm not sure if they were new or what was going on. Maybe they were nervous, but they had like the complete Sapphire Steel deck, like the expensive version, all the cards that you would expect to see, but they were making a bunch of weird mistakes, and I don't know if they were just, gaming me or whatever, but at one point they went to draw for their turn and they drew from my deck, and I really didn't know how to assess this specific situation. Obviously, I called a judge. I'd never seen anything like that in my life. So my opponent drew from my deck. They saw the top card of my deck. They were able to get information that I didn't have without playing a card, and they put it back on the deck. We called the judge, and the judge said in this instance it would be a warning, like at a DLC, it would have been a warning. But here they're just saying, all right, just shuffle up. You don't know the location of any cards in your deck. Like, you're not playing Vision of the Future. You didn't play Bosses on Roll. You don't know how your deck is laid out. So just shuffle up and keep playing. Personally, if I were at a DLC, I think I would contest this a little bit. I think that should probably be a game loss for doing something like that, just because I think that is huge information for your opponent that could swing the game. Especially when you're playing against high-level players at a high-level tournament. I would personally want to see a game loss for somebody that did that. In this instance, we just shuffled up and kept playing, but my opponent did tell me that the top card was a rabbit, and I drew into a Maui. So basically, they saw that a rabbit was on top of my deck. I had to shuffle. They probably knew that there wasn't going to be a rabbit coming down, but imagine it was like a be prepared and I needed the be prepared on that turn, and now we just shuffle and the opponent gets a warning. I don't think that's fair at all. I think, again, that's probably a game loss. I drew a Maui, just so you guys know, and I would have preferred to have the rabbit. So it worked out in my opponent's favor, but regardless, I was able to win on the draw both games and went 2-0. In the second round, another Emerald Amethyst player. I was on the play. They were incredibly skilled, and this was a really, really hard match. Maybe they made one tiny mistake that could have cost them the game. They quested when I had something in my hand to punish, which was a Maui. But again, the Maui can be punished back with a go-go. I think if they don't quest there and just hold off and keep their characters readied, then they could have won, but I guess I could have had Elsa and exerted their thing anyway, and they could have lost it. But regardless, it was an incredibly close match. I think that's how it's going to go with Emerald Amethyst every single time. I think that Ruby Amethyst is slightly unfavored. Maybe with Bell we're a little bit more favored, but I was running the Crabs. Again, the Crabs felt really good, but was able to win on the play 2-1, won on the play, lost on the draw, won on the play. In the final match, it was a crazy list I was playing against. It was Ruby and Amber, but they were not playing like the standard Mufasa. They were playing Robin Hoods and actions, and it was actually incredibly difficult to navigate this deck because I didn't know what was going on for half the time. I just didn't know the cards that were in their deck, so they were able to do a lot of explosive things that really were blowing me out of the water at different points. I was able to win 2-0 on the play, but the second game came down to like the final 6 turns, and I'll say the final 6 turns because I got to 19 like 5 times because they kept recurring a Pirate's Life and they kept playing it, and they had Maui Shark, and it was just incredibly difficult for me to get over the finish line. So I was just holding Goat Bounce in my hand because I kept getting a Pirate's Life out. I would quest up for 19 and they would take me down, and I just was waiting for the ink where I could play this Goat Bounce Goat and just get over the finish line from 17 to 20. So it was an incredibly tough matchup, but loved playing against that very unique deck, and it came down to the wire both games. I barely won. I'd bring up the deck list, but I absolutely have no idea what the list was. They were playing, again, the Robin Hood from the last set that looked at the top cards, and they were playing stuff like Dragonfire, which could get rid of my cards just straight away. And, of course, they were playing, again, the Maui Shark, which was able to bring these actions back. They were playing things like Thievery and Brawls and stuff like that. So they were able to control the board with actions, get them back with Robin Hood. And if I didn't have my Brawls for the Robin Hood, I was in big trouble because he was able to cast cards off of the top of his deck multiple times that I was unable to interact with when he played the Robin Hood down. So incredibly fun deck, and it was able to make it to a 2-0 and get into the 3-0 slot. So shout out to them. Incredibly powerful and potent strategy, and maybe something worth exploring a little bit more. Not seen that before and not seen it since. This tournament did have 72 players. The first tournament had 63. So again, these were big tournaments with really talented players. Like I said, multiple Golden Mickey winners. Somebody that got second place at a DLC was actually in attendance, and Team Forbidden Mountain was there. My team was there. And again, just so many players that were able to make day twos. So incredibly stacked. Did not expect that at all, but very lucky to win the convention playmat twice, and I still have an extra one. If somebody is looking to buy it, reach out to me on Twitter or Discord or something. I have an extra sitting around. I don't need two. So that was my PAX experience at the Ravensburger sort of section of the convention hall. But again, this was an absolutely huge convention. I did sit down to play Star Wars Unlimited. I learned how to play that for the first time. I have a Star Wars Unlimited mat, but I've never played the game. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but I don't think I have the time, energy, or money to play 2 card games competitively, but I might play the game, casually. It was a lot of fun. Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast was there in attendance. I used to play Magic. I don't anymore. It's not a game I'm really interested in playing any longer, but they were there in attendance, hosting tournaments as well. A bunch of other smaller indie creators were there. I didn't have enough time to play as many games as I would have wished, but next year at PAX, I'm definitely going to go focus on the Lorcana again. But I think this time I'll take an entire day to just walk around and do all the other amazing things that were there. They did have concerts as well. I was able to go to one of the concerts with one of my teammates. It was a very interesting layout that they had. It was a very intimate concert, I would say. It was a semi-small hall. There was some seating, but most people were stood up watching the concert. And again, it was just a really intimate experience that I really liked. I was expecting it to be a much more sort of bigger event, and there was a line out the door to get in because there were limited seats and limited standing room to get into the concert. So it was something people definitely wanted to get in and see more of. So maybe that will be something that will expand in the next PAX. But if you're thinking about going to PAX as just a Lorcana player, I would highly recommend. And of course, there's a lot of crossover with other TCGs and just board games in general, tabletop games with Lorcana, and I'm sure that you watching this video are a big tabletop game enthusiast, and if you were considering PAX, I would highly recommend. You can go experience the Lorcana for a day, and then the next day you can go play a ton of other indie games, big games, tabletop games with friends or with the developers of said games at their booths and just have a great time. So hopefully I'll be able to go to PAX Unplugged as a member of the press next year. Again, had an absolute blast, would highly recommend. Shout out to Ruby Amethyst. And if you want to win this Lorcana Illumineer's Quest, please leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll be back with more content. I will be attending the Last Chance qualifiers. I'll be there with Team Labyrinth. I'm staying in their Airbnb. So that should be a really interesting experience. Hopefully I'll be able to get some playtesting in with the players on Team Labyrinth, but I'm really looking forward to the Last Chance qualifiers, and hopefully I'm able to qualify for Continentals there and represent Ruby Amethyst well. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.